Hello. So for the last 12 months, we have been deploying AI with Spanish largest company. In fact, this is the largest one of the largest European banks. And we were deploying in operations where it cannot fail. And today we have tens of thousands of decisions every month that are made. And every one of these decisions is auditable for a regulator. So this bank is Banco Santander. I'm sure you all know this. And what we learned there applies almost entirely to every insurer in this room. And so my name is Andrew Volkov, and I'm part of Maisa. And next 15 minutes is going to be about how AI looks when it's built for a regulated industry, and what are the risks of getting it wrong. So that's the first one. So we start with the price. So we have colleagues from a strategic consulting company naming the size of the opportunity, quantifying it to be somewhere between 50 to 70 billion. And it's mostly concentrated in the areas such as customer operations, legal, HR, IT, and the opportunity is huge. We have CEOs of world's largest insurance companies saying that before we hire any people, let's see if AI can do it. So the pressure is high. The price has been named. The risk profile of the technology that's been used is not. And every productivity dollar that sits on this chart has to come from some AI platform. And the platform carriers that you are buying today have inevitable risk in them. And this is what we're going to look at further in this conversation. So there's a big question about this return on investment with this huge investment, right? So we have the hyperscalers such as Google and Amazon committing record $667 billion in 2026 to be spent on AI infrastructure. And this is 2% more than a year ago. So we have 70% of S&P 500 companies discussing AI in their earnings calls. And in fact, 54% of them tied to productivity. However, we should be seeing massive macroeconomic impact, right? And however, it's interesting to see that Goldman had published this report called AI Anxiety just a few weeks ago, and it focuses on examining these earning calls. And the overarching conclusion, and this is very important, so I'm going to quote it, is that there is no meaningful relationship between AI and productivity on an economy-wide level. In fact, only 10% of the S&P 500 companies were able to tie a specific use case to AI, and then only 1% of them were able to tie it to earnings, and less than 20% of all American businesses even use AI. So we are spending billions, but we're not seeing any macroeconomic impact just yet. But this is not really the full story, because the same Goldman report, when they really focused on these 10% of the companies and what are they doing different, have found that when these companies that were successful, the way they deployed AI was different than everybody else, is that they really picked very bounded tasks, very specific processes, and instead of kind of spraying AI and hoping it's going to work, giving it to every single employee, they decided to just work on this specific tied bounded tasks, and then that worked, and that delivered the impact. So that's the difference between 10% and 90% that there was no success just yet. And when we think about the risks that this technology brings, we could break it easily in these 3 different buckets, if you will. So one is that, and you probably know this is this infamous hallucinations. So we just downstairs ran a test with one of the LLM providers that I'm sure you all use today, and we ask a simple question against an insurance policy if flood damage is covered, and then we ask it 10 times, and in fact we get 3 different answers. And I think this is something that you have probably experienced multiple times. yourself is that a lot of times when you use just tools, this tool straight up, it just, you can convince them to provide you an answer that you want. So this is really not a technology that you can just use as is unless you mitigate that risk. And the second one is this, I would call it a black box problem, right? So that you essentially, you really have no clear understanding of how a specific output was produced. So the logic is hidden. And often, a lot of times, when somebody comes and asks you, how did we arrive to this decision? The answer is going to be, well, the model said so. Which is not going to really work, right, for a regulated industry. And then 2026 isn't something that's going to allow you to use this technology unless it's, it's more clear. So you really need to understand how it works because the regulator is going to ask you. In fact, in EU specifically, it's mandatory to provide a paper trail for every meaningful decision. So just AI, our model did it, is not going to cut. And then you probably heard about the token maxim, right? So there's a lot of meme going on about this. You just recently have CEOs of famous technology companies, Silicon Valley, coming and saying that we spent a year worth of budget on in 3 months of doing it. This is the CTO of Uber said that, and then companies are having these charts right now who spend more tokens and so on. So the thing is that there is very little predictability for stable businesses like what you guys are in terms of how much it would cost to run your business. When one transaction can cost you $1 and the next one can cost you 100. You just really have no idea how much tokens it would use. So this is a fundamental risk to run this technology as part of business as usual strategy, is that there is no understanding on the cost structure, and there's a huge fear that this can cost more than existing tools. And a lot of times it is, because like many cases you could do things that legacy automations can do for cents, and it would cost you dollars even more when you do it with AI. So these are the real risks. And these are the learnings that we have from deploying this. And when you think about the approach, and then how do you actually underwrite these risks, we have this 3-pillar strategy for it, if you will. So one sits on the approach that worked for 10% of these companies that Goldman found was successful, which is you don't really try to kind of spray AI and hope that it will just work for every employee. So instead, you really have to think about it, how you think about outsourcing. And you're all familiar with this. We've been doing this for 30 years, right? So you need to pick a process which has defined inputs, defined outputs, and a very clear understanding of how it works. And then you build these AI agents very similar to how we would outsource it. So they essentially become specialized employees. So they don't translate to a job is done by one person does not translate to 1,000 agents, right? This is just going to become impossible to manage. So they have to be right-sized so that they really tackle a specific, meaningful end-to-end process. And then you need the technology that's going to sit in the middle of this and solve the hallucinations problem to begin with, and then also provide auditable and deterministic executions, because that's what the regulations would require. You also need to have that technology to be in hands of business users, as this is truly the only way to enable it to work at scale. And then, last but not least, just using LLMs is not going to work. Is that because of this token maximum problem? So the tokens are only going to get more expensive because they're not getting less expensive. The model providers introduce more expensive plans. The models are better, but because of that, they're also more expensive. So the strategy on the technology side should be really to have ability to turn that into something that does not require use of the tokens all the time. And so we call this, there's a small language model concept, which is essentially you train your own mini LLM, if you will, on a specialized task that is possible to do when you have chosen this BPO-like of strategy to automate a specific process. And that leads to the business model that makes sense. So you have a predictability in pricing, that there's no pricing of API calls, there is no surprise token bills. All of that is the risk that's been given to you today by a lot of these AI vendors. But that's not what you want. You want a very predictable ROI. And so this is how you should be thinking about deploying this technology if you want to achieve meaningful impact. So if we double click on the tech, and specifically what we do, is that we have these 4 important elements in it, which is the resistance to hallucinations. So we have a layer that essentially what it does, it writes code. It looks at the process definition based on the objectives that are set by business people and effectively creates a virtual workflow that is a deterministic execution. And with that, it also comes with what we call an execution trace, which is every transaction now is documented with what data in, what data went out, how it was all tied together, and how it works. So it provides you full auditability, not only as a code, but also something that the business users can read and iterate and improve. And regulators can also evaluate. And this leads to this continuous learning idea that you also now don't just build an AI agent that just sits there, doesn't improve as business changes. Because of the feedback, you are now able to have this technology to build these agents in a way that they continue to learn. So much like people, that's why we call them digital workers. So they have this ability to improve with the continuous learning as more things go through the system and more transactions are done. And then we talked about scale and reliability, and scale is key. Because to deploy this in multiple countries, multiple business units, business lines, unless you solve the cost problem, it's just not going to work. So we have this dual model approach. So we use LLMs to do deterministic executions, which become traces when you run the transactions. We use these traces to train small language models. And that underneath produces the executions that work. So you also need a bit of a different delivery model to make this work. And this is how we done it for Santander. So we essentially did it as a partnership. So very similar to how BPOs have do it. So it's not like it's a software, use it, enjoy. So we really partnered on this foundation of the technology, which is auditable, accountable, can be used, addresses the risk we discussed, but we also have a blueprint of doing it in a consultative way so that we sit with business people, identify, and then we own the decision and we own the delivery. We do one process at a time, and it leads to effective execution. So very much BPO 2.0. Digital workforce outsourcing, as we call it, that's focused on outsourcing to a digital workforce of these specialized AI agents. And if you think about the areas where it applies, there is some that it doesn't. This type of technology doesn't work for your strategy because there is no deterministic understanding of what is the good strategy. You can have same inputs, and 2 different companies can come up with 2 different strategies. So using it there is not going to work because there's just no way to ensure it works correctly. And like product design is another example where it's not very useful, as you can see. So the dark colors here represent the areas which are most impactful for automation. And the light areas represent that its impact is minimal. And as you can see, underwriting, policy administration, billing, collections, and claims are the examples of where the use of this deterministic audible technology that's powered by latest innovation of AI tech is capable of delivering meaningful impact. So, if you think about which vendor to use, that's not really what you should be thinking. But what you should be thinking about which risk profile that you want to have as you kind of move to implementing this, because you will be implementing this is inevitable. And so understanding the risk profile of these decisions is what differentiates the companies like Santander and on those who sit in this 10% of the successful companies from the others. And then if you want to learn more, come see us at the booth. We're downstairs. We can tell you how it works. So thank you for your attention to that.